Hi everyone, my name is Julija Lubgane and I'm a fashion illustrator. Today I would like to share with you how I use watercolor brushes in Rebelle. For this tutorial I'll be using mainly flat brush and the liner brush. So before I begin application of the color, I usually create a pencil sketch, so is what you can see already on the screen. The way I create my sketches are usually follows by a couple of layers. So as you can see in my layer palette, I have 4 layers. So my main pencil where I do my line work and a little bit add of white, that's what is kind of my signature look is, and add in more depth with a black and white pencil. So when I finish with a pencil, I usually like to add a little bit of color. All my illustrations are not oversaturated with color. I just like to add something that will bring the interest, and usually it will be like a splash of color or color variation on the elements, and not necessarily an entire illustration. So let's get started. First, I usually create the first layer, and you can go into a layer palette here and just click plus sign, and usually I rename my layers. So this is going to be my color 1 layer, and I will keep the blending mode at normal for now. When you change the blending mode, you can see how color changes on the canvas, so you can play with that as well. So before I start application of the color, I usually like to play with this visual setting palette. This is a kind of new thing for Rebelle 3. So what I really like is that you can change how your watercolor will behave. Prior knowing how this works, you have to test a couple of watercolors and see the difference. So I will not go into details right now, so we can set up another tutorial for that. So I usually do edge darkening a little bit less than standard, so I will do maybe like a 3, and drip size for this illustration I will do a little bit more, so I'll keep it at 6. Next thing what I need to do is I need to set up my watercolor brush. So I'm gonna start with a flat watercolor brush, and I'm going to keep probably the pressure around maybe, let's say 33, so I don't need a lot of pressure. What it means is like how hard basically you press in with the color, and loading is how much paint you're gonna have on the brush. So I need quite a lot of paint, so but not full brush with paint, so I would say 58 will be a good number, and less water actually, so I would keep it maybe at 34, 35. So because what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna apply water first, so that's gonna give me a good base with a water for my watercolor. That's why my main watercolor brush will not have a lot of water. So again, before I start, I prepare a lot of things. So what I want to talk about is I use a lot of pause tool. So what it is when you pause and you can start application of the color, your color will not bleed until you release the pause. So I really like this feature. It gives me enough time to apply water or the color, and just kind of like helps my thought process, because I like to evaluate things like in terms of a balance and how much water and how much paint I need to apply. So the pause button is a really good tool to use with any paint. Also, because I'm gonna use long drips of the paint, so I need to set up my tilt. So my tilt, basically the canvas is gonna be tilted down, and you can change the tilt as you work. So I'm gonna set up a pretty small range of tilt, so about this much, and you can always click in the center of the tilt. That means the paint is gonna sit where you applied it, and it's just gonna kind of bleed around, where when you check on, the paint is gonna start dripping down or to the direction where you have it set. So I guess we can get started. So my pause button is on, and the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the water. So you can or either click W on a keyboard or go from the tools. It's a third button right here, looks like a little water icon. So size of the brush, it really depends how big is your canvas, how big is your painting. For this one I'm gonna start with 45, and I do need a lot of water. So again, my pause button is on, and I'm gonna start application of the water. So the way I work is I sort of not necessarily randomly apply the paint. There is a thought behind every stroke in my illustration. So what I want to have is I want to have main color on the left hand side of her hair. So, and then I'm gonna smoothly go into the right hand side and apply just a little sort of strokes of color. So the main water and main color will be on the left hand side, and as you can see, I'm just sort of showing the texture of the hair, but I'm not going to every single little part. That's not my goal. With my illustration, I strive for balance, sort of interest, creativity. Doesn't have to be like a photograph, because it is not. It's definitely an illustration. So this is how I apply the water. So as you can see, when you apply water, the indicator of the water is really bright, beautiful, sort of like an ocean color. That's what it reminds me. As you will finish with the water, you will be ready to apply some color. So again, my brush is already preset, so I'm going to my watercolor, and of course I don't see the water because as soon as you switch from one tool to another, water markings sort of disappears. So let's choose some color. I want to have some kind of a bright tone, just something very playful and cool. So I'm gonna probably do some kind of a maybe blue hair. You can always test it out just on a little edge of the canvas, so you can see actually how the paint looks the canvas. So, and you can do Control Z to deselect, and I really do like that color. So I'm gonna start where my water application and her hair will be applied. So I'm not going super detailed, I just need a lot of paint in here. And as you can see, because the water in my brush is not so high, you still see the strokes of the brush, and also the loading is pretty on the medium side, so you do see enough color. And like I said, every time you need to kind of pick and see where you apply the water, go back to your layers, and you can just double check where you apply the water the most. And as I said, the main color will be on the left hand side, and here I'm just gonna do freehand strokes just like that, and just continue with little application. You can always zoom out, and I zoom out, and I'm gonna change my brush to a little bit bigger size. You can change the size of the brush from the watercolor menu brushes here, or you can use brackets on the keyboard, make it smaller or make it bigger. So I think this is pretty good. I don't need a lot of color, and what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and I'm gonna pull the canvas up so you can see what's gonna happen. So everything is on a pause, so nothing is moving, the paint is not dripping, nothing is happening. So, but now I'm gonna release the pause, and you will see actually how beautiful color gonna start blending with water. Let me zoom in. And I'm gonna give a little time until I release the tilt. So I really like how it started blending, and my tilt is on. Every drip just follows the canvas, follows every single ridge here. And you see the most paint was here also, and it goes straight down. How beautiful it is. So I really like this, and I'm not gonna let the layer dry just yet, but I'm gonna definitely change the tilt to very small because I don't want any more drips. and I'm gonna continue with my liner brush. So with my liner brush, basically I'm gonna keep the same settings for the brush. I don't need much of the water because the water is still on a canvas, and loading is pretty good at medium size, so that's good. Size of the brush, I will make it definitely smaller. And what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna go on the right hand side. You see how beautiful the flat brush mixed with water. It's absolutely awesome. It's just so natural. So now I'm gonna take a liner brush and I'm gonna go a little bit around the edges of her hair, and you can see it mixes with the water that's still there. Let me zoom in. How awesome is that? And I'm gonna create just basically like a elements that just kind of indicates the direction of her hairstyle. Same thing I will do here. And because the water is still here, everything mixes, but my liner brush, because it's so thin and so fine, I do create like beautiful elements and lines. So I'm gonna add a little bit here, and again, it's great that it blends together. Same thing, just need a little bit of hair color application. And you have to be really like confident and free with this, because you can't be stiff, because that's actually the watercolor doesn't like the stiffness of paint and brush. So just go with it. Feel free to create random lines and random strokes. It really will blend beautifully together at the end. Surprises just basically creates unknown. So I'm just gonna continue like that. Here I'm gonna show a little indication again. So let's zoom out and see what's happening. Yeah, pretty cool. Absolutely love the drips. So now I'm gonna dry out the layer, and this is if you go in a layer palette, it's a third button. So just gonna dry out the layer real quickly, and I'm gonna take my flat brush again and maybe change the color to a little bit darker. So I'm gonna go into my color and I'm gonna move this just a little bit to darker side, and I will apply a little bit more paint in it. What I'm doing is just, again, I'm not following specific lines, just I need more paint, a little bit depth into her hair, just like that. And as you can see how beautiful the flat watercolor brush blends with the paper. It's absolutely beautiful. I love it. Just like this. A little bit definition. Yep, it's pretty cool. So far so good. I absolutely love it. So what also you can do is you can use the eraser tool. So I like to do that as well. So there's a lot of different erasers that you can use. There is a round, there is a square, there's a basically like a splatter structure, and I really like that one as well. So I'm gonna start with actually the splatter. So I'm gonna take very broad, and make sure you change the pressure maybe to a little bit less of pressure, so you're not erasing completely everything. But I'm gonna give this definition, sort of when you put a salt on a wet watercolor, it's kind of like diffuses everything, so that's pretty cool effect. So as you can see, just like that, a little bit here and a little bit here. Then I'm gonna take a round soft and I'm gonna change the size to much smaller, and you can go into the parts of her hair and erase just a little bit more. Again, it's all about creating definition and not being so super precise about your illustration or your work. A little bit here. So pretty cool. So I'm gonna go back to the brush again, and I'm gonna use the liner brush, but I need a little bit more color, so I'm gonna increase the loading. I'm gonna make a smaller size, and I'm gonna use this dark color that I just used with a flat brush, and I'm gonna go just in a couple parts and make a definition. See, it blends through. Maybe I should dry out the layer a little bit. And I'm gonna start again. See, much better, because I think the layer was a little bit wet from that flat brush still. See, and now I'm gonna go on the right hand side, and we'll do the same. Just like that. So I really like this one. I think I'll stop. I don't want to overdo it. And if I zoom out, it's awesome. It's so natural. It looks like absolutely realistic watercolor. So if I zoom in just to show you guys details, how beautiful watercolor looks. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Okay, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.